Welcome to Health Creators, where we discuss new creations in healthcare and building the future of health innovation. This is Liv. I'm a health tech founder in the clinical trial space, and I'm joined here today by Ed Farrar, founder of Auto, defining the future of coping with the incurable. So, tell me about Auto.
I'll tell you the short version, I'll tell you the long version.
Okay.
At Auto, we a digital health startup. And the aim of the company is to help people get their lives back from a condition called tinnitus. And
just the ears, right?
Yeah,
the ringing.
So it's commonly experienced as ringing ears. It's really unpleasant for lots of people that have it. It's just like a constant ringing sound. Stops you from sleeping, concentrating, really impacts on mental health. Stops you from hearing occasionally. So we help people to get their lives back from this condition using a digital CBT program.
Okay.
That's successful through something like that. That was meant to be the short version, but that's actually turned out to be the long version.
That's the long version. Is that not usually a symptom of something else? So like this ringing in your ears, is that like usually like, hey, I have, I don't know, some sort of disease and then I get ringing in my ears, or is it like a standalone?
It depends. So yeah, you're right. Tinnitus is a symptom of an underlying cause. That cause could be anything from, well, the two most common causes are hearing damage from noise exposure.
Yeah.
So it's common in the military, common in musicians, in industry workers. And the second most common cause is hearing loss related to age, so age-related hearing loss.
Got it.
But there's a load of other things that could cause it, like earwax, an infection, a brain tumour in severe cases.
Did you have this idea because you used to be in the military or related to that? Yeah.
So I'm a doctor by background. I spent 5 years in the RAF. I wanted to train to be a surgeon.
The RAF, like in airplanes?
The Royal Air Force, Well, I didn't do much flying. I was a doctor.
So what, do you sit on the airplane and then you're there in case like someone blows up?
Unfortunately, no. I never. So that takes a lot of training to get to that.
Oh,
stage.
really?
So,
okay.
So I was going to train to become a surgeon. So I was dead set on becoming a plastic surgeon.
Ooh, like reconstructive or
burns.
Okay, burns.
Surgery as well.
Hand surgery.
Is
that plastic surgery? Is hand surgery?
Yeah. So
what does that mean?
Yeah, so hand surgery can commonly be either looked after by plastic surgeons or orthopedic surgeons.
Is that when you like burn, say like the surface of your hands, and then someone needs to like come and graft like the skin?
Yeah, so that could be a part of surgery. Basically, any injury to the soft tissue or the bones of the hand that needs repairing, it's usually plastic surgeons that do that.
So why didn't you do plastic surgery?
So I did 2 years of training
in the military.
Yeah, as part of the military. It was in an NHS hospital, and I very quickly realised that in the long term, although I enjoyed it, it wasn't something I wanted to dedicate my life to.
I see.
And I found it rewarding, particularly towards the beginning of my career. I found it very rewarding, like having the impact on patients on an individual level. Yeah. But I kind of wanted to do something that was bigger and have a bigger impact on lots of people.
Because with being a doctor, you felt like things were very one-to-one.
Exactly.
And you're like, how do I scale that to make it 1 to like 1 million?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And so this kind of ringing in your ears problem, did you see that a lot in the military, and that's why you decided to start this?
Yeah. So when I was in the military, 2 things happened. The first thing was I developed tinnitus myself.
Did you?
Yeah.
Why is that? So you were on these airplanes? No.
No, I wasn't.
It's just, is it the guns?
So it's actually a coincidence that I had tinnitus and was in the military.
Okay, so it wasn't related.
I don't think so. I certainly didn't have a huge amount of noise exposure. I think it's probably because I used to listen to music too loudly with headphones.
Really?
And
so what? Can you develop this from listening to music too loud?
Yeah, just repeated noise exposure can cause tinnitus. It's actually going to cause a lot of tinnitus over the next decade because just we listen to music too loudly.
And concerts, you know? Like, I have a friend who is partially deaf, and there's no other reason except for going to, like, music festivals.
Yeah, it's... as a society, I do very little to protect young people's hearing from loud music.
But you know, the crazy thing is, like, I went to a music festival this summer, and people bring their babies.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know, like, what happens to, like, the development of your ears if you're that young, right?
It depends on how loud the music is and how close you are to the speakers.
True.
I think it's perfectly acceptable to go to, I don't want people to think you shouldn't go to music festivals and listen to loud music.
Yeah.
Provided that you wear hearing protection, you can buy earplugs online, good earplugs for less than £20. And secondly, you give your ears a break. So don't listen to loud music for extended periods of time. Because that's when the risk increases. So
you had this ringing, you stopped listening to music on your earphones. Does it go away?
The tinnitus in most cases doesn't go away if it's caused by hearing damage. So from my perspective, my experience, I was pretty lucky. Yeah. I got used to it quite quickly.
So you still have the ringing, but you're used to it.
Yeah. So I should probably mention actually, so for most people with tinnitus, it's permanent. And that's why it's so unpleasant, because you're stuck with this ringing noise.
And it just never goes away.
It never goes away. And if you imagine having a ringing noise for the next hour, that'd be pretty annoying. For the next week, you think, oh God.
So is it constant?
Yeah.
How do you like sleep?
Exactly. So I'll explain how. So for me, it was fairly faint. And this is really important because it's how our app works. I got used to it quite quickly and I stopped noticing it.
Interesting.
So if you imagine being on a long plane journey.
Yeah.
Like, flying to America or Canada or something. The sound of the aircraft engines are pretty loud and it's not a pleasant sound. Yeah. But after like 10 minutes or so, your brain just tunes that sound out. You stop noticing it. You stop perceiving it as a threat. And you can sleep.
And why is it that some people are able to essentially like downplay it, right? Like almost like, I mean, that's a natural response because usually you don't notice a smell until you go into a room and you smell something really pungent, right? Mm-hmm. But if you've been in that room for like 3 hours, you're not going to notice it. Yeah. So why does that response happen in some people like you and not in others?
Well, it happens in all people actually. Okay. So it's the response is called, the psychological word for that is called habituation. Yeah. So habituation is the process by which your brain stops reacting negatively to the stimulus, in this case, tinnitus. Yeah. So, in the case where you're on a flight for a long time, your brain would stop reacting negatively to it. You don't perceive it as a threat. You stop noticing it. And that's how our program works in Otte. We habituate people to the sound of their tinnitus. So they stop noticing it. They push the sound into the background. They no longer perceive it as a threat, and it doesn't make them anxious. So for people with tinnitus, when they first start hearing that sound, their natural
fixation on it. Yeah, is that
exactly. Their natural reaction is, I can't cope with this, and that makes them anxious.
And it makes it worse.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you can interrupt that cycle and gradually just push it into the background and stop perceiving it as a threat. So when I hear my tinnitus now, admittedly it's not that loud, but when I do notice it, I just think, it's my tinnitus. Doesn't bother me. Yeah, it's not going to cause me any issues. When I first it was like, oh God, that's not a nice sound.
So it's kind of like insomnia, right? Where it's like, I can't sleep, like I can't fucking sleep, and like it just reinforces the fact that you can't sleep. Yeah. So is that kind of like the same thing where it's like, okay, you now have this lifelong condition and you're gonna hear ringing forever. Yeah. How do we make it easier for people to cope with it?
Yes, exactly that. So if you wake up in the morning, an example would be if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you hear when you wake up, the first thing you notice when you wake up is your tinnitus. And in the early days, what will happen is that will make people anxious. Yeah. And they will think, shit, my day is going to be so bad now because I've got this ringing noise and I can't cope.
Yeah.
And that's their day ruined. Like, it's literally within minutes of them waking up, their day is ruined. If you've habituated to it, you'd wake up, and this is what we teach in Auto, you'd wake up and you'd hear your tinnitus and think, so what? It's not hurting me. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not going to ruin my day, and I can just stop noticing it, and I'll do something else to distract myself from it.
And was this born out of like you feeling super frustrated by the situation?
So it was actually born out of a combination of things. So my co-founder George has tinnitus, but he had it quite a lot worse than I did, and he struggled with it. So he kind of
and he's technical, or
yeah, he is.
Okay.
Yeah. So when he first started struggling with it, he kind of remembered that experience, and we both actually saw men and women in the military who had pretty severe tinnitus, and it's having a big impact on their quality of life. And that's kind of when we realised, okay, this is a big problem that needs solving. The help that's currently available for it is just
not great.
Yeah, it's dreadful. Like,
really?
Yeah.
What is available now?
So there's no cure.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 you can't get rid of it and it won't go away. Best way to manage tinnitus is with cognitive behavioural therapy. To access CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, in the NHS is pretty difficult. You could be waiting over a year.
Yeah.
And you could be waiting over a year for 1 or 2 sessions with a therapist. It might not be that beneficial. If you want to pay privately, you can, but it's prohibitively expensive for most people. So to access the best treatment for tinnitus is just very difficult. And in the US, it's similarly difficult because it's expensive and there's not that many therapists that are trained to provide CBT.
So if you had like kids now, right? And I don't know if you have kids or whatever, but if you had kids, do you think you would like be super cautious with what they listen to and how they listen to things? Because
I would try. I mean,
would
it make a difference? My parents constantly used to tell me like, stop listening to music too loudly. I was like classic like arrogant teenager, and I was like, I know better than you do. And funnily enough, I didn't know better than them. And
how old were you when this kicked in?
My tinnitus.
Yeah.
It was around 5 years ago.
So you're like 20.
Yeah, 25, 24.
25. And then what the doctors just said, this is going to be forever now.
I never saw a doctor for it.
You never saw a doctor still? No, but you are a doctor. So you're like, I'm just like, I'm my own.
Yeah, so I think I would have done if it had come on suddenly, but it came on pretty gradually. And it gradually got worse. Most people, when they have it, it can come on suddenly. I spoke to George, and his had come on actually a lot more suddenly, and he did go to the doctor for his. Most people do go to the doctor.
Yeah.
That's actually part of where the problem lies. When you go to the doctor will tell you something along the lines of, sorry mate, you need to just learn to live with it. There's nothing that can be done.
Really? Yeah. Gosh. Is that a UK thing or is that global?
That's everyone with tinnitus has been told.
Everyone has been told that.
I've spoken to hundreds of people with tinnitus now. Not all of them, but like 99% have been told something like that. Imagine going to the doctor with this horrendous thing is literally ruining your life, and you're like, I can't cope with this. And you go to the doctor and you sit down and you think, okay, I'm going to get this sorted now. The doctor's going to be able to help me. Yeah. And then the doctor just looks at you and says, I'm sorry, I can't do anything to help you. You need to learn to live with it.
Gosh. Yeah.
And that's why tinnitus is so unpleasant, because there is no help.
Is your end goal to actually build something that will treat this at some point, or is it just like, let's manage it?
I don't think you need to treat it. You can have a perfectly normal life with loud tinnitus. It's obviously easy for me to sit here and say this because I don't have loud tinnitus, but I've spoken to plenty of people that have had loud tinnitus who have just stopped noticing it and they've gone back to living their normal life. Would I want a cure? Of course. Like if someone said to me tomorrow there's a cure for tinnitus, I'd be over the moon. Yeah. Because it has a big impact on people's lives. But what I want to do with Otto, the end goal, to answer your question, we want to take what we've learned for tinnitus, habituating people to tinnitus, to anything else that has a negative, like any other conditions that have an impact on your life. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from managing tinnitus and incorporate that into other unpleasant long term.
I see. So it's like, okay, CBT for one specific thing, and then can we cross apply that to other types of management, right? Because I guess when you're thinking about even like pain, a lot of it is gonna be like chronic.
Yeah.
And it's more about how do you manage it than how do you fix it.
Yeah. A lot of these, take a condition like chronic pain, for example. It's particularly unpleasant for so many people that have it. It's really difficult. However, what makes it so unpleasant is the emotional reaction to it. And it's the same with tinnitus. Like, you have these horrible conditions like IBS, incurable, chronic pain, long COVID, something like that. What makes these things so difficult to manage for people is that they feel like they can't cope. The emotional reaction to the condition, in many ways, is just as bad as the condition itself. Yeah. And I think if we can introduce habituation to the world, like, people don't know what habituation is, but if we can teach people that habituation is the right way to manage these types of things and the right way to manage these conditions, we can actually make these conditions 10 times more bearable than they are right now.
Got it. And how long have you been working on this?
Full time, about 2 years.
2 years. Okay. What were you? So you came from the military straight into doing auto?
Yeah. So I quit the military. I finished my second year of surgical training, quit the military, and then I started working on auto, but I could only work on auto part-time because we didn't have any funding.
So what were you doing, the other parts?
I was working in A&E.
Okay.
I just locumed as a doctor, so I had to kind of like pay myself to live. But it was during the second wave of COVID.
Oh gosh.
So I'd work on, it sounds like a kind of a classic like entrepreneur, like, kill yourself and to make it a successful story. But like, I was working during the week on auto, and then at weekends I'd work in A&E, and I'd go into A&E and it'd be like
1 billion people with COVID.
Yeah, and like, staff would be crying, like patients shouting.
Crying.
God, it was a pretty.
Was it like super intense, like A&E during COVID?
Very, very intense. Yeah.
Were there like people like dying everywhere? But you were second wave, so it wasn't as bad, or?
Well, I think it was worse.
It's worse.
Actually, I mean, I wasn't. I was a surgical trainee, so I didn't have the expertise to be managing the really sick ones. But still, it was a very difficult time, and it was obviously a lot more difficult for the people that had COVID. I think if I were to go back, I probably wouldn't push myself so hard, and I probably wouldn't have worked so many shifts, or maybe would have taken it a bit more slowly with Otto. But I'm incredibly impatient. And,
but you wanted the results faster.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did working at A&E during the pandemic kind of shift your view on healthcare, where we are today?
I'd made my mind up that I didn't want to work in the NHS.
And that confirmed it, you think?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was under a huge amount of strain and pressure, and my decision had been made when the NHS wasn't under that amount of strain and pressure. But seeing what I'd seen during COVID had just exacerbated all of the problems that the NHS already had. I found it a very frustrating experience to work as a doctor and a surgeon, because I've really loved operating and
cutting people open.
A bit like that. No, that's it's also like that. That's why they do what they do, because it's immensely rewarding. But to have a day of if I was spending a day in theatres, supposedly operating, I'd probably only spend about 10 to 20% of my time actually doing the surgery, and the rest of the time would be admin associated with that. And
you're like, I do not like this admin.
Yeah, of course. And I think a lot of it was unnecessary admin as well. Something that could have easily been
automated.
Easily, but I know how difficult it is to make change within the NHS.
Yeah.
But it's just so complex to make these changes. I would have quit if I kept doing it, I think.
I see. And how is it moving from the military, right, which is the most regimented structure ever, where you have process on process, hierarchy on hierarchy, things happen at E004 whatever, right? Into like startup land?
I actually think it's been a lot of the stuff I learned in the military has taught me a lot about leadership.
Yeah.
And discipline, self-discipline.
Yeah.
I was never really heavily integrated with the military because I was working in an NHS hospital.
Got it.
So I was actually I spent like a year doing only military stuff. But I still learned a lot in that year. So it's actually been, I think it was a really rewarding and positive experience. But there's still been things that I think I've taken from that probably aren't appropriate for startup life. So I'm pretty anal about being on time.
Yeah, and that's good.
Time. I know, but sometimes I go a bit too far, you know.
What, like when people are late, you're like...
Yeah, it just annoys me when it shouldn't do. But I was never like a very see, some people go into the military and it's just so right for them because they just love
structure.
They love the structure.
Yeah.
And I was never like quite like that. You know, I enjoyed it because it was good for me and I learned a lot from it. But
because you have to go from rule follower to rule breaker, essentially, right?
I think I was kind of in the middle of that already because I was working in the NHS and I only spent actually 1 year doing only military things.
How is it moving from like surgery, right, where you don't really have to necessarily spend a lot of time talking to people, into founder, which is, hey, my job as CEO is to essentially talk to people all the time. If not, you know, the people I'm trying to help, then the people who are supporting us, fundraising, to the team, to everyone, right? The whole thing is about, a lot of it is about communication.
Yeah. You're right. There actually is a lot of that in surgery. It's just not as you'd expect. So you do need to be able to be good at talking to patients. Surgeons do have a reputation of not being good at talking to patients, but it's still very important. And to be a good surgeon, you need to be good at that. You also need to be good at managing a team of people, like a theatre team or like the ward team. And actually especially as a junior surgeon, I spent a lot of my time just convincing people to do things that they weren't keen on doing. So for example, like, you know, if you want to request a scan or an x-ray or a CT scan, you know, you'll ring the radiologist and you say, hello, can I request a scan, please? And they'll do everything they can to try and not do that scan. And you have to convince them why it's in the patient's interests to do that scan. And that's just an example. And there's lots of scenarios like that where being good with people really does help. And there are surgeons that I don't think are good with people, but I think all the best ones are just as good with people as the best medical doctors or GPs. Got it.
And are you guys B2C? I know that sounds like a random question, but
interesting question. So we are with direct consumer.
Yeah.
The reason we did that was because we just wanted to focus on building the best product.
Yeah.
Like a product that our users love. And we felt the best way to validate that was by seeing how many of them paid for it and how long they paid for it for.
It's cool. And you have paying users now?
Yeah.
Nice. How have you managed, like, I'm guessing you're a class 2A?
Nope.
No.
We're not a medical device.
At all? No. How did you navigate that?
With finesse.
With finesse.
In my head.
Okay.
But no, it's so we don't treat tinnitus. We don't cure tinnitus. And we don't claim to treat or cure tinnitus.
Yeah.
So the way the app works is by teaching people to stop noticing it. We're not actually doing anything to the condition itself. We're changing the body's response to the condition.
Got it.
So if we were delivering treatment to tinnitus directly, or we were delivering therapy for tinnitus directly, then we would be a medical device, would be a class 1 medical device. But we don't do that. We just change the body's reaction to it.
Yeah.
So we don't track the condition. We don't measure the condition. We don't monitor the condition. All we do is change the way you react to it. So we're helping balance that.
Interesting. That's a good angle. Because it makes product development easier as well, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper. So it means we can make changes faster.
Yeah.
It's cheaper. But if you look at what Headspace do for anxiety, Headspace helped people manage anxious thoughts. And if you look on the website, they're very, very careful.
Yeah.
You read it and you think this is just for anxiety, but then if you look at the wording they've used, they'll say Headspace helps with anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
So they're very clever with the language, and we have to be very careful with the language we use, because
you can't market it basically as like a solution.
Exactly. We don't want to market it as a treatment for tinnitus, because it's not.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to be very we have to be accurate about what we're
it's a coping mechanism.
Exactly.
And how has like building, this company shifted maybe your life? I wonder if you had the opposite effect, where most people, they kind of build a startup and life gets like significantly more intense, right? But like, I wonder if you moving from like, hey, I'm like in A&E, like shoveling dead bodies during the pandemic, into like, now I'm a startup founder. Was that like a descaling almost?
It's still very intense in many different ways.
Yeah.
But it's intense in a much more enjoyable way.
Yeah. Like the emotional roller coaster is there, but maybe not as like...
It's more extreme.
Yeah.
So you have high highs and lower lows.
In startups. Yeah.
You'll know that. But that's what makes it so addictive. I think just creating something from scratch, creating a product from scratch, creating a company from scratch.
Yeah.
It's just so like cool. I just love it. It's so exciting. It's so rewarding. I love working with people. I'm very lucky to work with like a very, very talented group of people who are, a lot better at everything than I am. And it's my job just to kind of facilitate them and remove things that are slowing them down. So it's and also of course motivate them and define the vision and all that stuff. So yeah, it's very rewarding. The other thing that I kind of love about it is that because I'm the CEO and the co-founder, I can define the culture.
Yeah.
Or I am defining the culture and the kind of how the company is and what we want to do. And in the NHS, of course, the NHS is an amazing organisation, but I think there was lots of problems with the culture. Well,
from speaking to people, it seems like it's like super hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's all about tenure and like bow down to the consultants who made it, right?
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's very, very hierarchical in medicine and nursing, and I do think there's a blame culture in the NHS as well. And if you make a mistake, which is impossible not to do, everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. It's whose fault is it?
Yes. The first thing is who is to blame? Who do we need to blame for this thing that happened? And then there's no protection for the person whose fault it was. They will just pin this person against, they'll pin this person down. And
you scapegoat them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's been so many cases in the news where that has happened. And I think like if you compare the culture of the NHS to in the aviation industry, people are encouraged to own up about mistakes they've made.
Yeah.
People are encouraged to come forward with things that have gone wrong, because that's how you prevent them from happening in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Create systems to prevent things from happening. But in the NHS, as wonderful as it is and as amazing it is, we have a free healthcare service. I certainly felt personally that you don't want to come forward with mistakes, especially if something bad's happened, because there's a potential that you could be blamed for that.
And when you're like building out this culture, right? I mean, I think it's interesting that you came from the military, because the hard thing about hard things, right? Or like this culture book that is written by Ben Horowitz, he's always like, you kind of lead the culture by example. And he gives like reference to what makes a good general, what makes a bad general. But I think when I first started this, I was like, hey, like, let's make a 12-page PDF on like what the culture should be, right? And it was just so wrong, because you can't really like dictate how people should behave. People will come in with their own predefined cultures, right?
You're right. The culture is encouraged and shaped by you as the CEO, but it's defined by probably the first 10 people, 20 people that join the company, because people bring in their own way of doing things.
Yeah.
People bring in their own systems that they learn from elsewhere. People have their own personalities and their own character traits that will mesh. That will go into the company, and that's what's so cool about about doing this is you know, and it's one of the things I'm very proud of at Otto. We have a group of people with insanely different perspectives from all walks of life, personally and professionally, and that just means that we get I think often we get the right decisions and we get the right things happening because people just have different perspective on these things. So yeah, like, but you know, going back to what you said about Ben Horowitz's book, I think you have to be, once these kind of values are defined and once the culture is defined, you do have to enforce is a very military word and a strong word, but I think you do have to enforce them and you do have to encourage good behaviours that you've all agreed on, behaviours that have been defined.
So that's like incentivizing people to follow that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Manage the macros kind of thing.
Rewarding good behaviours.
What's been the most rewarding thing for you in this journey?
I mean, there's so many things that have been rewarding. It's difficult to pick one. I really do love working with the people I work with. I wake up on a Monday morning, and before I used to wake up on a Monday morning and say, oh, God, it's work again. It's so dreadful. Yeah. And it'll be fine. I get to Tuesday or Wednesday and be like, actually, it's not that bad. Yeah. But with this, I wake up on Sunday and I'm like, right, like I'm so excited.
I'm ready to go.
Get to work. And, you know, get everyone motivated and see everyone and, you know,
it's awesome.
Argue with my co-founder and mates and it's great.
Go shout at some people.
No, I don't shout. I don't shout at anyone. We do have some.
Have heated moments.
We do have some but that's good. You know, like
it's good.
That's what like we call it like productive conflict, and the conflict is what makes people feel engaged and what makes people feel like they're contributing to the decision.
If you could leave the world with one thing through Otto, what would that be? What's the impact you want to make?
The impact I want to make, I want to be able to habituate anyone to anything. I want habituation to be accepted as a way to, you know, improve your life, to stop reacting negatively to things that you might have reacted negatively to before.
Yeah.
So, and I think that you know, tinnitus is the perfect testing ground for that, and the perfect proving ground.
Because essentially, if you can habituate to anything negative in your life, you can be resistant to trauma, basically.
Yes.
And that makes you then happier.
It means that you're more in control of how you react to an unpleasant stimuli. And often with an unpleasant stimulus, it's the reaction to it that makes it so unpleasant.
Yeah.